Dang. Okay. All right, it's the start of Big 12 play this weekend. So let's talk about the conference. Let's talk about everything else that's been going on. We tend to, during the non-conference, just take a peek at what OU's doing and not so much the rest of the league. So I thought it was a perfect time to bring on Joey Helmer of Heartland Sports to talk about the Big 12 as a whole because he covers the league. And Joey, I'll start here, man, because I've made this comment a couple of times already this season. You know, when I look at the D1 softball rankings, I see OU at 1, I see Oklahoma State at 2, I see Texas in the top 15, and I see Baylor in the top 25, who obviously has handed OU its only loss. You've covered the Big 12 for a long time. Am I right in saying that it feels like maybe this league is as good and as deep as it's been in quite some time?
Absolutely. In fact, just yesterday, I actually wrote a story about this, and I was able to talk to Patty Gasso on Wednesday and ask her thoughts about it. And, she agreed. Obviously, this is a league that had the national championship matchup last year in Oklahoma and Texas, and Oklahoma winning its second straight national championship. But you had Oklahoma State there, like you talked about, they're number 2 right now. You had them in the semifinals, and behind those 3, I'm not sure that it's the same as it is this year. Baylor is really good. Obviously, they beat Oklahoma earlier this season, and Texas Tech is a team that I think is maybe being slept on. We'll see what they're able to do as conference play starts, but they went and beat Maryland a week or so ago, and that was a really good win. They split with the Terrapins out there in a tournament, and so this league looks to be where it's going to get 5 teams in, I think. And I think 5 teams right now, honestly, in my poll, I had Texas Tech as one of the teams that was just outside the top 25. And I'm kind of twisting my wrist this week thinking, like, man, I should have them in there. But, yeah, this is a really strong league this year. It looks that way.
Would you be surprised at all? I mean, they're the number 2 team right now. You said they made the semis. They've started to become a regular up there in OKC, but would you be surprised at all? How shocked would you be if we're talking about Bedlam in a championship series this year?
I would really not be shocked. In fact, right now, it's what I'm projecting. I really, really like Kelly Maxwell. I think she's absolutely good enough to match up toe-to-toe with anyone in the country, and she's proven that. So I thought last year for Oklahoma, it was a little bit of a benefit that Texas – and look, I think Oklahoma would have won the national championship either way, but I think it was a bit of a benefit that Texas ended up winning those 2 games against the Cowgirls. To me, it made that championship series a little bit easier for the Sooners. So, I think that's your favorite matchup right now. And another team that could really mess that up, I think, is Tennessee. They are loaded. Mackenzie Donahue out there is having a fantastic season. She leads the country in doubles, leading off for the Volunteers. So that's a team that's going to have some say about it. Obviously, people are going to be high on UCLA throughout. I haven't been that impressed with the Bruins, but right now it certainly looks like we're on track for Bedlam. They're the best 2 teams in the country.
Yeah, and all bets can be off come the postseason. We see that every single year. But is Texas as good as they were a year ago? Did they have some key losses that they're still trying to figure out? What are just kind of your overall thoughts on the Horns as OU gets to play Texas here soon?
Yeah, they lost some key pieces, and I've been back and forth on this Texas team. They should have one more loss than they do. The whole situation with the Kentucky game earlier this year where they stalled and that ended up in a tie. But, they've looked really good too. And people are ranking them in their top 10. I actually have them at 15 right now. So that's a team I'm back and forth on. They certainly they're ceiling to me. I think they're a team that could probably get better as the year goes on. I see them as one of those teams. But as far as them being as good as they were last year, not sure on that just yet.
Before you hopped on, I was blabbing on for about 8 to 10 minutes or so about how Jada Coleman, we shouldn't think of her as the best player on this team or maybe the best player in this conference. I think she's got a legitimate chance to win Player of the Year. I just think that she's been that good this year. Your thoughts on Jada's chances to win Player of the Year so far?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, the statistics when you look at them at Jada Coleman, I mean, she's absolutely on fire. And the thing that's so impressive with her is that you've looked at her throughout her career so far, and you're like, okay, she's a leadoff hitter. She can bunt the ball. She can use some gap to gap power at times. Obviously can speak and beat out stuff, get on base, get the party started. But now she's hitting for power, Tyler. I mean,
Yeah.
her swing is different when she comes into the plate. I mean, she steps into the batter's box, and you're not just having to worry about her setting everything in motion from a get on base standpoint. She can launch over the fence and has 7 home runs, and just is a different player for Oklahoma. So, yeah, she's absolutely in that mix. And another player that I think for the Sooners that maybe needs to be getting a little more credit, and I think she would be if she was on another team, is Alyssa Brito.
Oh, totally.
Mackenzie Donahue and leading the country in doubles. Well, Brito is right there close to her as well. So she's having a phenomenal season.
Yeah, I totally agree with Alyssa Brito. She was a breakout player last year, and she's been even better this year so far. I could not agree with that more. OU opens up conference play this weekend in Ames. Geez, this could be the last time OU softball maybe ever goes to Ames to play a game, right? Iowa State thus far, I was looking at their schedule earlier and just trying to find like a game or two where you say, okay, they put it all together this game and they looked really good. Like here's evidence that they've, can put one together. I haven't found that yet. 11-14, swept by Arizona State, lost a couple to Arkansas. This just feels to me like a weekend where OU should go and look like OU and take care of business. Obviously, playing on the road in some elements can be difficult at times, but do you see this weekend for OU in any other way that, well, they should look pretty dominant over this Iowa State team?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. It seems like one of those weekends, and oftentimes that's obviously the case with Oklahoma and the Big 12. And saying that, I think there's going to be some tough weekends for this. And I'm not saying they're losing series stuff, but they're going to have to battle through this league some this year. I truly believe that. And this is not going to be one of those weekends, though. They should go. They'll dominate names. Like you said, Iowa State was swept by Arizona State, and but just doesn't really look like a team that's in any way going to challenge them. We'll see. Kansas and Iowa State, I think, are by far the worst 2 teams in this league. And I would expect when the Sooners play both of those that they're not really going to be competitive.
I had a big take last week. It's, you've been waiting on Jordy Ball to get going and get right. And she has that Florida State game, and man, I've just felt it since then. It's like, okay, that Florida State game coming in relief. That's the game that we're going to point to and say that's when Jordy got back to being Jordy. You agree with that? Like, how have you felt about her really since that Florida State game, and what do you project her to be the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's funny when you look at the early part of her season. Obviously, when you look at the other 2 pitchers, I mean, you're comparing to who have been the best in the country, really. I mean,
seriously, yeah.
Nicole May gives up her first run of the season last week, which is just insane to go more than a month in a season without giving up a single run, and not even an unearned run, a single run. So I do think that was a point where it was like, okay, yeah, this is Jordy. She's good. But I think maybe people overreacted to her a little bit, because when you really break it down, it's like she got in a little bit of trouble at Baylor and gave up the 3-run homer. Well, that's the difference right now in Oklahoma being undefeated and not being undefeated. And maybe those 3 runs are the difference in how people perceive the start of her season. So, yeah, she's been dominant since, and I don't think there's any concern there. She's clearly healthy, and I think that's the biggest part of this thing is if you saw and thought maybe she wasn't pitching good at the beginning of the year because she wasn't healthy, that would be more concerning. But that's just not the case, in my opinion.
Hey, last question I got for you before we get you out of here. So you have Bedlam in the championship series, which would just be epic. I mean, it would be incredible. The seed in OKC would be awesome. I'm guessing you think that this conference race, though you like Texas, though you like Baylor, the conference race is going to come down to that Bedlam series at the end of the year, right? Is that what you think?
Oh, I think so. I think it's going to be very similar to a couple of years ago when Oklahoma went to Stillwater and had to win that series to win the league, and ultimately ended up doing so. And so I think it could be a very similar race. And man, I'm interested too, and just looking kind of down the line and seeing how all the rest of these teams stack up, because that we talked about Tennessee and UCLA a little bit. Clemson's another team that's there, but these teams are eyeing Oklahoma. And to a degree now, I think they're eyeing Oklahoma State. I mean,
yeah,
those two so far have been the best teams in the country. And so it's really incredible when you look and see, hey, not only is the Big 12 race potentially coming down to that series, but it's on the national stage. It truly is as well.
I lied. I got one more question. So I'm sure you were like everyone else and thought pretty highly of OU to start the year. We're 28 games in, man. Like we're more than halfway through the regular season, which is still just crazy to me, and it doesn't seem right. But based on where your preseason expectations and thoughts were of this team, has this team lived, talking about OU, has this team lived up to those expectations through 28 games? Have they surpassed your expectations? Like, how do you feel about this OU team now based on what you thought about them to start the year?
I'll say they've certainly lived up to the expectations. I think no one can argue with 27-1. The thing I'll say, I mean, I was very loud about the fact that Alex Storako was not an All-American at Michigan last year. I thought it was a joke when you looked at her statistics. And so as soon as she entered the transfer portal, I was like, oh, man, I wonder if Oklahoma's going to try and bring her in. Surely enough, that's what happened. And, oh, by the way, all she's done so far is be 10-0 with the sub-1 ERA. She's been fantastic. Nicole May, we talked a little bit about her. I mean, she's been as good as she could even possibly be. She's been unreal. Patty Gasser talked about her coming in this season. You know, this was going to be a year for her where she really took that next step. And I was one that believed that. I didn't believe it would be this good. I mean, 78 strikeouts to 14 walks. She's been incredible. So when you break it down from an individual standpoint, it's hard to say that it hasn't been better than anticipated. And when you look kind of down the line, Jada Coleman's got 7 home runs. And, I mean, Oklahoma's hitting the ball like crazy. So this is a formidable team, and they're dominating like they normally do.
Agree on all fronts. Joey Helmer, Heartland College Sports. Go follow him as well on Twitter at Joey Helmer 10. Really, really good softball follow there as well. Hey, man, as always, appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Okay.